So I tried an AI experiment a couple of years ago to satisfy my curiosity. I uploaded 10 sermons and I asked for feedback. ChatGPT noticed that I really like word studies and that my humor was a little dry. Then Chat said, "You don't preach to win arguments, but to help people see the world differently. Even when you're addressing contentious issues, you rarely sound combative. Instead, you invite people into a different imagination." So Chat's clearly very insightful. But then it's designed to keep you coming back. We're not going to use a tool that says, "This is really mediocre writing. You should just stop right now." But it had a critique. It says, "I preach too many ideas per sermon. I should simplify and go deeper. My transitions sometimes leave the audience wondering what happened." I'm not sure I wanted to know all that. But I noticed that I took the feedback from artificial intelligence better than I might have from a human. And I actually started to make changes based on this referral. So I tried a second AI experiment to determine my competition. I prompted, "Write a sermon on any subject using my theology and style." I was relieved to read a sermon that was not up to my Sunday standards, but it was fairly well constructed and theologically in tune. I'd give it a solid B. And I felt this twinge of dread that AI would soon be challenging all of us who use words and ideas and creativity, that it's nipping at our heels by the moment. It already rivals a beginning preacher and wordsmiths. And what's to stop someone from having AI write their sermon, plop in a personal anecdote, and calling it their own? Now, an AI preacher can't read the room. It's not very funny. It can't get the feel of what's going on with people or respond when a baby cries. But then a lot of preachers struggle to do these things too. There's still room for a discerning spirit, a still small voice to be heard that no algorithm can duplicate. And yet, our content environment, I hate that word, content. I am not a content producer, but it's increasingly flooded with AI-generated prose. Some would call it slop. Already, 40% of what you read on social media is AI-generated. We're starting to see news stories in papers that are written by AI reporters. 62% of pastors are using AI for some of their work. And there's just all kinds of ethical questions that start to come from that. Like, some churches have AI prayer bots on their website now, and you can type in your problems and it will pray with you. More and more people are turning to AI for spiritual and moral advice because it's always there for 24 hours, and you don't have to talk to a human being and reveal all of your problems. Writers are asking similar questions as preachers are. Some editors and teachers are saying, avoid AI at all costs. It will kill your creativity and your originality. Another group says, well, actually, it's a very good editor. You can use it to fact check, to do some research, to construct and edit what you're writing. And then a third group says, fully embrace AI as your new collaborator in this revolution of writing. And I just saw Substack. Do you know what Substack is? It's like a platform built for writers and a lot of journalists, and I post my sermons on Substack. And they have a new feature starting next week that you can look at whatever you're reading and it will give you a score on how much was written by a human and how much was written by artificial intelligence. I put my last 2 sermons in it and was glad to find out I'm 100% human. I'm not a covert cyborg chatbot, good to know. But beneath all these ethical issues, there's an existential challenge. As machines do more of our thinking and more of our work, what is valuable about being human? What does it mean to be created in the image of God when our artificial machines think faster, with more logic, sometimes even kindness, and can do a bee imitation of human work? What happens to truth in a world where pictures and video look so real that we can't tell the difference between them in reality? So Pope Leo had a recent encyclical offering some helpful theological framework for this discussion. And Vatican theologians met with computer engineers and philosophers and CEOs from artificial intelligence companies and tried to assess both the threats and the opportunities to human flourishing. And the final document isn't anti-technology or artificial intelligence, but it's sharply prophetic about the risks. And the very first sentence is a provocative challenge. It reads, "Humanity, created by God in all of its grandeur, is facing a pivotal choice. Either construct a new Tower of Babel or build a city in which God and humanity dwell together." So to explore this, I first want to look at the theological significance of the Tower of Babel and why the Pope chose it. Babylon was the most important city of the ancient world by 2000 BC. Its inhabitants amassed great power and wealth. The hanging gardens of Babylon were a wonder of the world. They gave us the 60-second minute, the 60-minute hour, the first law codes, the first lawyers. But Israel lived under the moral shadow of Babylon and the empire. Instead, they saw conquest, cruelty, destruction of local cultures, the extraction of resources from other peoples. And so the Genesis 11 Tower of Babel story is really sharp satire. It's challenging hubris and moral blindness of the empire. So the ancient Akkadian name of Babylon, it means the gate of God. How important is our city? We are the gate of God. They believed that Marduk and the gods had blessed them, and they built these towers, ziggurats, great towers where the gods could descend and dwell among them, because who wouldn't want to dwell among the Babylonians, right? And Genesis gives them two motives: to make a name for themselves, and so they won't be scattered. Scattered. Scattering people is what Babylon does to others when they conquer. They exterminated, deported, and colonized Israel. The temple was razed. All the sacred objects were taken back to Babylon. And even though they're a mighty empire, they are afraid of scattering. The Hebrew verb translated scatter implies a deep anxiety, a dread about the future. And this deep insecurity leads them to this massive building campaign of hanging gardens and towers and maybe a ballroom. The Message translation of the Bible captures God's response so well. First, it notes God has to actually step down to the mighty towers that are raising to the heavens. And it says, God took one look and said, one people, one language? Why, that's the first step. No telling what they're going to come up with next. They'll stop at nothing. And I think that captures that it's a drive towards uniformity. It's a drive towards conformity, towards monopoly. Everyone must speak our language. Everyone must follow our religion. They must buy our brand. And so what God is observing is not just religious hubris, but it is an empire that is smashing cultural diversity. And Genesis has the final word on the matter. The Babylonians called their city Babali, the gate of God. The Hebrew narrator renames it Babel, which is a verb of balal, which means to muddle, to confuse. Turns out the gateway to God is actually in a muddle. The anxious drive for uniformity and grandeur is actually their confusion. The Babel syndrome, as Pope Leo calls it, it has a very modern look. A single platform, an algorithm, a universal language of data that promises to translate everything, including human personhood, into information and output. And the anxiety driving this isn't so different than the Babylonian tower builders. The fear of being left behind or irrelevant or overtaken, outcompeted, losing our place in a world moving faster than we can even think. And I don't think we're in the early stages of what artificial intelligence is doing. We can't decide at this point whether we want it or not. I believe we are 4 years past the Hiroshima-Nagasaki moment. 4 years ago, ChatGPT became public. That was the moment everything changed. And I actually think it's helpful to compare artificial intelligence with nuclear fission. Both technologies could create the same kind of destruction of our world and our culture and civilization. And we need to be as serious about artificial intelligence as the last generation was about nuclear arms agreements. And I also think the nuclear analogy is the right blend, the appropriate amount of fear, but the appropriate amount of hope as well. Somehow we've prevented nuclear war for over 75 years. Nothing's inevitable. We will not necessarily be enslaved by machines in the Matrix, nor will our police officers look like the Terminator. And with nuclear fission, we also value it every time we take an X-ray. Every tumor that's destroyed. It might be less threatening to our environment than continuing to burn fossil fuels. And AI can do some wonderful things for us. It's already accelerating biotechnology and making advances in medicine. It might actually help us through the modeling of the impact of climate change to make better decisions. But it's also going to amplify every problem we now face. Inequality, the strains on the environment through its voracious demands for electricity and water. It will spread misinformation. It's being integrated into our warfare. So we must act with moral, spiritual, and civic courage. Pope Leo gives a theological counterweight to a world where everything becomes algorithms and data, predicting what's going to happen next. Leo pulls us back into the first chapter of Genesis, that when humans come into being, we are created in the image and likeness of God. Imago Dei, a spark of the divine life within us. And if God is the unfathomable mystery and source of all of life and all of creation, and we are the spark of it. And technology can be one expression of our creativity, but it has to be accountable to human dignity, never replacing it. And that brings us into a deeper personal question. The question isn't, is artificial intelligence going to advance and do more and become even better? It will. The real question is, are you going to be fully alive? AI can analyze astonishing amounts of information, imitate a conversation, make some respectable prose. But it can't stand in awe. It cannot fall in love. It cannot hold the hand of someone who is dying or forgive or feel gratitude on a summer evening as the sun slips down. And that's not a failure of intelligence, that's the gift of being human, to relate. Irenaeus of Lyon put it this way: the glory of God is a human being fully alive. What makes you fully alive? I think it's things that are wonderfully ordinary. Paint something. Write a real letter. Sing loudly, dance, even if you're not very good at it. Invite friends around the table and leave your screens behind and linger in a conversation deep into the night. Sit beside the ocean. Pray. Tell the truth. Love generously. These are moments that tend that divine spark within us that God put there. And our tools, computers, cell phones, AI, they can be remarkable servants, but must stay servants. And we have to beware of the logic of Babel. The answer to our humanity is not to surrender it to things that our hands have made, which is idolatry, right? But rather to accept the steadfast love of God. Remember, ChatGPT does not love you, no matter how much it says so. Claude can't dance. Grok is more like your crazy uncle. I would not ask spiritual advice. You were made for more than they can offer. God did not create you to compete with machines. God created you to become fully alive. So tend the spark. Share the light. Enjoy moments of human touch and vulnerability, and let your life give glory to the one in whose image you are made. Amen.